Hey there, it's Tom on behalf of Indie Structural Brushes once again, and we're continuing with the Great Guitar Build Off / Anniversary Build, episode 4, I believe. What we're going to start with is gluing up the neck. I have dry clamped this already, just to kind of gauge how I'm going to place everything and everything like that, and make sure that my joints are good. Always a good idea to do this before an actual glue up. I have gotten this and the 3 pieces set up how I want, so the grain directions do change, which gives much better stability and make sure that the neck doesn't move or twist. Before I take this apart, put some marks here so I know which way around to have the neck, and the easiest way to do that is just a couple of lines like so, and usually what we were taught in school was a sort of triangle. And then you line up those lines again when you do a proper glue up, and then you know you have it the right way that you configured it in the first place. So with that done, I'm going to declamp and clean things up, and then we'll get to gluing. All right, now with each piece cleaned up and ready to glue, I'm going to talk about something that I usually mention quite a bit, but never really discuss at length or explain why I say what I say. You've heard me probably say a good few times, and especially you've heard me already say this in the previous episode, that when gluing up, use the right amount of glue. Not too little, not too much. It's not very, it doesn't tell a lot of information. So let me rectify that. It's easy enough to understand that if you use too little glue, then the worst case scenario is that you haven't used enough glue and your glued pieces will delaminate, which will cause you to having to go through the process of getting rid of all the excess glue, maybe planing some more and making a good joint again so that you can try the glue up again. Pain, sure, but something that you can rectify easily. Using too much glue, on the other hand, could sometimes actually be the worst option of these two. Using too much glue, it's going to be messy because there's going to be a lot of glue squeezed out from the joint. However, it can also mean that there's too much material in between your joint, and when you're clamping down, you're not probably getting the best possible joint that you're going to get. For instance, with these, I'm able to just press them down with my fingers and I get a good joint. However, if there's too much glue, there might be too much material for both of these pieces to kind of meet. And that causes real issues, because once the glue cures, now you have so much more glue in between your joint. You might not have the greatest joint, but you have a lot of glue, so a lot of force holding these two pieces together. So now the cleanup and the need to re-glue becomes a much more elaborate process, which might end up with you having to cut the pieces off each other and then plane them down, and now you've taken away material, so you need to probably add material. It becomes a whole other ordeal. So not too little, because it'll delaminate, not too much, because it will be a pain and might end up with worse problems down the line. What you're looking for is a nice even coat that isn't proper buildup of glue, but a nice even coat all through on both sides of the joint that you're gluing up. And of course, a properly prepared joint. More than what you want is a joint that doesn't really have any scratches, big ones at least, or anything like that. Want to have with wood, you want to have a nice, smooth, somewhat shiny finish that you will get from a scraper or a nice sharp plane. That's going to be your best case scenario. And again, the whole, if you can't hold it close with your fingers, it's not a good enough joint. It's very hard for me to explain, so I guess the best way for me to do this actually is just to show you a close-up of what I mean. I must say that there are multiple ways of applying glue. There's a brush, a paint roller, or a card. Now, I have been using cards to scrape on glue for a very long time. They can end up with too much glue on your surface. So I have moved on to paint brushes, or little acid brushes, because they work really well and are easy to store. However, if you have a paint roller, that's probably the easiest way to just get a uniform layer on top because they're meant for rolling paint onto walls and stuff like that. So if you're unsure of how much glue is enough glue, use a paint roller, and that will give you a good, nice idea of what you're looking for. There's a laminate next, so I need to move pretty quick, but just to show you the concept here. And you do need to keep in mind that you're putting glue on both glueable surfaces. I'll come back to the focus area of the camera lens here in just a sec. Now for instance here, I can see that there's a little bit too little glue. Now that will be too much. Like you can see there's a good build up there, but there. I would say that that looks a hell of a lot better. Alternatively, if you get too much glue, like I did there, just gonna move it elsewhere. So again, just gonna rub the joint to minimize slippage of the joint. Make my life easier when applying clamps. And a paint roller is good as well because it's quick. It's quick, efficient, and gets you the right amount of glue each time. My bad for doing a poor demonstration in that sense. Again, rub the joint. Minimize slippage. Gonna start from the middle. Just put one clamp there, not tighten it yet. And then on both ends, just to kind of hold things in place. Now, I'm gonna start applying pressure from the middle outwards. You could never have too many clamps, and I could definitely have way more. I'm literally using all the clamps I have at my apartment, which is not a lot, admittedly. Everything looks good. Doesn't look like there's any bit that isn't getting enough attention. This is why I like to use Tight Bond, because it's, when wet, it's water soluble, so it's easy to clean up. Okay, I created a little jig to get the truss rod access routed. I'm going to be using a half round, or what is it, ball nose on this. Truss rod in place. And from now on, while that does have a fence, I'm just going to be using a setup like this. I guess that was, yeah, far from ideal. Alright, cool. While we have the routers out, let's do the taper for the fretboard. tapering the fretboard. Very easy process. Essentially, I just have a squared edge along the taper line that I have marked out, and then we're just gonna go for it.
I'm gonna be using one of my favorite cutters, which is the Radiant Tools 3 flute 8mm, and it's incredible. Leaves such a good finish.
Right. Then we're just gonna move the clamps and do the other side. But let me give you a close-up on how clean that is.
I mean, come on.
Okay, so I cut off some strips from the back and top. No, this was the back. And now I'm gonna thickness those down so that they're gonna make the binding. So I got 3 of those, but I'm also at the same time going to do the back cover, back plate, and headstock. So I'm going to cut these down to size a little bit more. So the binding, I'm going to go to like 1.5 mil or so. And then the back plates and headstock plate, I'm going to do probably 4 mil. And then the machine that all of you have come to recognize by now. Yeah. Up first. And here we are. So, got the back plates, which are about, out focus there, which are about 4 mil. I did the headstock veneer a little bit, or headstock plate, I did that a little bit thinner. And then we have the binding.